President Trump threatens to bomb Syria, downgrades relations with Russia, and lashes out after an FBI raid on his personal lawyer's office. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg tap dances through congressional hearings. House Speaker Paul Ryan calls it quits. And it's only Thursday. I'm Molly Roberts, with Fred Hyatt, editor of the Washington Post editorial page, and opinion columnists Christine Emba and Dana Milbank. Folks watching on Facebook and YouTube, if your comments and questions make us think, we'll try to get them on the show. Dana, you were on Capitol Hill for the Facebook hearings, and you tweeted out this photo of Zuckerberg sitting on what appears to be a booster seat.
Well,
Dana, could you stand up now?
It shows that we're in the internet era because, you know, when I was his age, we would have sat on phone books. So this was a wee bit different.
I want more details on that and everything else later, but first let's focus on what distracted President Trump this week in the midst of major national security issues. The FBI raid of the office of Trump's so-called fix-it man, Michael Cohen. He's the lawyer who paid hush money to Stormy Daniels. And on Monday, the FBI made the unusual move of seizing documents from his New York City office. Trump says, as he's said before, that it's all a witch hunt.
So they find no collusion, and then they go from there and they say, well, let's keep going. And they raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. And I think it's a disgrace. So we'll be talking about it more. But this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in.
The Washington Post reports Cohen is under federal investigation for possible bank fraud, wire fraud, and campaign finance violations. All this could be unrelated to the Russia collusion investigation, but Trump's not buying it. Are we? And can someone here kind of just walk me through how this started? And this wasn't even Mueller's guys.
We're looking at you, Kristen.
Sure, I can try to. As we know, it's kind of a twisting path.
Yeah.
So this raid happened on Monday. It was kind of a surprise for everyone, including Michael Cohen.
Probably especially.
That's the point.
Yes. Many people have noted that Robert Mueller is really trying to take advantage of surprise to get as much information as possible out of potential collaborators, people he wants to talk to or maybe get onto his side without giving them any advance warning. Anyways, the FBI, but under the New York Southern District Attorney, not under Robert Mueller directly, raided Michael Cohen's office. I believe his home office, too. They took his cell phones and laptops. It's interesting that Donald Trump would go after Robert Mueller because, again, what seems to have happened is that in the course of his own investigations, Robert Mueller came across presumably some interesting information, possibly related to
Interesting information.
to the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels and perhaps also to payments to Karen McDougal, and handed that off to the district attorney in New York, under whose jurisdiction this actual question was. And so that was the group that engaged Michael Cohen's office.
Right. And Rod Rosenstein signed off on this raid. So right now we're kind of looking at who's in danger here. We have Mueller on the one hand, maybe Rosenstein on the other. What do we think? Should we be worried about either of these people being fired right now?
I'm worried sick about it. Well, we don't know, but every hour, every day brings some new development. Now suddenly, Michael Cohen has led us back to where it all began with the Access Hollywood video.
Right.
And it's just like, this is the phenomenon of scandal convergence, when you've got multiple different threads of different scandals suddenly all meeting in one. So it's very exciting. And anybody who says they know what happens next is lying.
I didn't know that was a real thing, scandal convergence, but I guess all sorts of like scandal terminology are coming up in this administration. One thing that is also pretty interesting that I didn't mention going before, or talking about this beforehand, is that to raid a personal attorney's office is a pretty big deal. There is sort of the phenomenon of attorney-client privilege, where communications.
I read this week that that's dead.
Yes, from Trump's Twitter feed.
Oh, that's where it was.
Actually,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
of course.
okay.
So much
So it's
news
definitely
there.
true.
But the fact that the FBI was able to get authorization to raid this office to sort of not necessarily violate, but go past this rule of attorney-client privilege means that there must be something pretty significant there. And the fact that so many people signed off on it, Rod Rosenstein, the New York district attorney.
And a judge.
And a
Yeah.
judge, makes it sound pretty significant.
And I mean, I think that's, we don't know really what they're looking for. I mean,
Right.
the Post and others have done great reporting, but one significant fact about Mueller is he really doesn't seem to leak. And
Yeah.
every time he does something, we're surprised by it, which I think is a good thing. And so what's really striking about Trump's reaction is when he says this is an attack on the country, no, this is a legally executed search warrant approved by a federal judge. And so when you ask, line and danger, do we have to worry about, you're saying, do we have to worry about the rule of law? And that's a scary question to even have to ask.
We're asking it, and we're relying maybe on members of Congress to do something about it. So there was news, there are bills in the Senate and the House, I think, where people are trying to look at a way to protect Mueller, and congressmen have kind of waffled on how serious about it they are.
Right.
Do we believe that they're going to do the right thing here? Do we think they have the spine for it?
Chuckle.
Well, it comes up now. It was going to come up today in Senate Judiciary. Now it's April 26th, so Mueller's going to have to twist in the breeze for a little while here. I think whenever you pose the question of Congress, are they going to do the right thing? They may, after all, other possibilities have been exhausted. That will take some long period of time. And it struck me as Fred was saying, we really don't know what Mueller's going to do next. In that, he's exactly the same as the President of the United States. So we have no idea what he may be doing. This morning, he indicated that he believes he did have that power to fire Mueller in December. He just chose not to do it.
Congress, I mean, there is a bill. There were two Senate bills. They united them, which was a good thing. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee said he would take it up, which was a good thing. Senator Grassley, he said it would be suicide if Trump fired Mueller. That's good that he said that. All of this is sort of important, not because it's going to become legislation. Presumably anything they passed, even if you could get it through the House, would be vetoed.
Right.
But the question is, will they send a message that you shouldn't do this, and that there would be a reaction if you did this? And the sooner and stronger they send the message now, one would hope, the more of a deterrent they would be creating. But as Dana says, it's hard to predict.
Donald Trump doesn't really read messages in that way very well, so.
Yeah.
So we have a Facebook comment from Charlie Curie who says, "Attorney generals don't make mistakes." And Ruth Hatfield says, "Hi from Florida." So hi back to Ruth. And do attorney generals make mistakes?
I think we all do.
I suspect that was said with some irony. Was there a little emoji with it or
Charlie,
something?
no emoji
Yeah.
that's been relayed to me, but Charlie could follow back up and see if it was said with some irony. Trump clearly thinks that attorney generals make mistakes, which is why he's grumbling about putting a new attorney general in. I'm not totally sure how he means he would have done that.
They get on the occasional tarmac, have the occasional meeting with a former president
But I mean,
whose wife is under
there's a
investigation.
serious point again. Attorneys general do make mistakes, and U.S. attorneys make, but that's why
Right.
we have checks and balances. And no attorney general could have executed, and no special counsel could have executed the search warrant without getting approval
Right.
from a federal judge.
Right.
And they would have had to show a federal judge a lot of evidence of why it was necessary. And so mistakes get reviewed and corrected, and this isn't just one person running roughshod.
Right, now it looks less and less
Charlie.
like a So take that, Charlie. Thanks for coming. Thanks for chiming in. But, right, it looks less and less like it's this, I mean, it never looked like this prosecutor was running wild. But with the Southern District involved instead, with the judge that this had to go through, this is just another example of how there are many people who are saying that there's something we need to be looking at here. And Trump, of course, feels more under threat than ever, with more of that mounting against him. So during all of this, President Trump threatened Syria, Russia, and even Iran on Twitter following a suspected chemical weapons attack on the city of Douma. That was the last rebel-held town in Syria's eastern Ghouta region. Early Wednesday morning, Trump tweeted, "Russia vows to shoot down any and all missiles fired at Syria. Get ready, Russia, because they will be coming. Nice and new and smart. You shouldn't be partners with a gas-killing animal who kills his people and enjoys it." The animal Trump is referring to is Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who says threats to attack his country are based on lies. Trump continued his tirade against Russia, tweeting, "Our relationship with Russia is worse now than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War. There is no reason for this. Russia needs us to help with their economy, something that would be very easy to do, and we need all nations to work together. Stop the arms race?" So, this has been kind of a wild tale because last week Trump said, let's get out of Syria. Assad maybe reacted, we don't know why, by dropping what seems to have been chemical weapons. And then Trump said, we're going to send missiles. The Pentagon was shocked by this. Then this morning, Trump sent out another tweet that said, I never said when I'm going to send out missiles. So what's going on here? I think, first of all, at this moment, do we feel that it's likely we're going to do an attack? And what would that attack have to look like?
So you're asking me what's likely that President Trump's going to do?
It's kind of unfair.
That's a setup. You know, I would say that there are two possibilities. One is, there's more, obviously there's several possibilities. One is we don't do anything. There's another possibility that as a year ago, the United States reacts with some missile attacks to punish the use of chemical weapons. But the bigger question is, you know, if Assad is a gas-killing animal or which is right,
yeah.
Why does the United States have no strategy for the larger question of what's happening in Syria? And for, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed and millions of people are refugees. And, to be honest, the kind of lack of strategy started before Trump became president. But when he, as you said last week, said, oh, let's just get out and leave it to other people, who are the other people you would leave it to? It's Iran and Russia. So there's kind of this disconnect between, if we're concerned about leaving Syria to the animal, then even shooting some nice new smart missiles is not a plan. It's not going to deal with this issue.
Right. And last year, we did shoot some missiles. I don't know how smart they were compared to the ones that Trump is talking about this time.
They're smarter now.
But
They weren't very nice back then.
but they hit an airfield, and I think the discussion here is, well, that didn't work. That didn't deter him. There have been smaller chemical attacks even over the past year before this one. So if there were to be an attack, does it seem like it would have to be something bigger than that? Something...
I mean, I think the idea, if the purpose of the attack is to sort of establish that this international norm that chemical weapons are not going to be used, especially against civilians, and you have to pay a price, then the price would have to be larger than it was last year. And the United States would, and its allies, would have to destroy more of Syrian Air Force. Doing that without also killing Russians at this point could be difficult, and that raises a lot of other dangerous questions.
Speaking of, well, the Russian question is one that I would like to know a bit more about. It seems that our relationship with Russia has gone from collegial, before Trump was saying we need to be friends with Russia, to sort of tetchy. I guess Trump is threatening Russia on Twitter, and then Russia released this press statement that said we don't do Twitter diplomacy, which was insulting but true. And now I guess we're in an arms race that's even worse than the Cold War. And I guess I don't know, a Cold War baby, maybe? I don't have a strong memory of how bad the Cold War was, but this whole arms race, Cold War comparison seems intense. Where do you think that's coming from? Is that true?
I mean, I think a key thing to remember about the Cold War was even while the United States and the Soviet Union were competing for decades, they also were talking and negotiating. And there was always a sense that, or not always, but through most of that period, there was a sense of we have to manage the relationship. And this relationship could be very dangerous, and we are going to be in conflict, but where it's in our mutual interest, we're going to talk. And so we would have arms control negotiations going on at the same time as we were, competing in parts of the developing world. And that aspect of the relationship doesn't seem to exist at all right now.
I love talking to you youngsters about my youth during the Cold War. I did actually. I even in my time.
Tell us about Reykjavik, Uncle Dana.
We had fallout drills we'd climb under our desks so the nuclear bomb would not hurt us. We actually did. We did have that back in the day, but there was a sense of mutually assured destruction. The idea was nobody would be crazy enough to start an attack because we're all rational actors here. And I think the difference here, it's more of sort of the madman theory that the president is operating under, which we would typically expect from the likes of North Korea, that you don't really know what he's going to do. But I have to say that I think we all bear a little bit of responsibility for this situation on the Washington Post opinions section, because we've been saying for 15 months now how Trump needs to get tougher on Russia, and he is now threatening Russia with a hot war and firing actual missiles and daring them to shoot us down. So I think he's reading you, Fred.
Finally.
Some viewers have some thoughts. Some viewers have some thoughts.
There are a few other points
too.
he seems to have missed from our editorial.
I think he misinterpreted the message, but he's taking it seriously at least.
So Bob Ayagawi on YouTube says, obviously we need to work with Russia. Question is, why are globalists mad that Trump doesn't want to escalate tension? LOL. So maybe he's reading too and he's frustrated about globalists.
Are we
but
globalists? Who's
presumably.
globalist? Okay.
And on Facebook, Gavin Blair says, nothing like starting a war for a president super low in the polls to divert attention away from his Russian collusion. So
Wag the dog.
this is an example, I guess, of Trump looking tough on Russia for the first time, but like you said, it's not necessarily manifesting in the most productive way. So,
I mean, just to be fair, I think
Yeah.
the administration, even though he has talked about wanting to be friends with Trump, his administration has been tough on Russia. They did sell arms to Ukraine, and they did do sanctions on Russia, and so, I think you have to make a distinction even before now between some of his rhetoric and some of their policies.
I was at the Pompeo confirmation hearing this morning, and he's very careful not to show a lot of distance with the president, but he was saying, no, the reason we have bad relations with Russia is not because of the Mueller probe. The reason we have bad relations is because Russia is a bad actor. So, he's clearly a Russia hawk.
Right.
Clearly, Bolton is. That's what makes this all so interesting.
Right, and it's interesting to see the rhetorical shift from Trump, and I guess we'll see whether it sticks. So no matter what happens with that, Trump has already redefined America's relationship with the world, and he has redefined politics here at home. House Speaker Republican Paul Ryan broke the news this week that he is not running for re-election. To many people, that's a big sign that the GOP has been officially. In his announcement, Ryan reminded people that he did not seek the job and took it reluctantly.
But I have given this job everything that I have, and I have no regrets whatsoever for having accepted this responsibility. This has been one of the two greatest honors of my life. The job provides incredible opportunities, but the truth is, it's easy for it to take over everything in your life, and you can't just let that happen. because there are other things in life that can be fitting as well. Namely, your time as a husband and a dad, which is the other great honor of my life.
So, why might Ryan be leaving now besides wanting to spend more time in Janesville with his teenage children?
Look, as he said, he never wanted to be there in the first place. You know, the job was thrust upon him. He feels like he's done his American duty, and it's time to let someone else make America great again. He's apparently uninterested in the task for now. Throughout his tenure, there has been sort of a clash of almost personalities and goals, right? Ryan was always famous for sort of carrying around his big budget files, you know, touting balancing and deficit reduction, like huge bar graphs and charts. He was really into sort of data and policy. And even if you disagreed with his policies, at least he seemed to have something behind them. And now the GOP, the administration, Republicans in Congress really seem steered more by whim and by sort of pandering to their crowds than anything else. And I mean, Trump is obviously like the apotheosis of that. And I think Paul Ryan is just not interested in that lifestyle anymore, and he's ready to go.
I mean, it is a miserable job, and it has been a very unsatisfying one for him. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the Trumpification of the party, and while that's true, I don't think that's really what's going on here. I mean, Paul Ryan was secure. He was in command of the caucus. He could have stayed on. I think what he was realizing is just it's a very unpleasant time, and I think that's why I think the number's up to 45 House Republicans who are either retiring or running for other office or have already left for some scandal or another. It has been historically unproductive. With the exception of the tax cut, which Paul Ryan was bragging about yesterday, but also blew up, you know, sort of the fiscal standard that he had made his signature in Washington. So it was I actually, you know, everybody always says I want to spend more time with my family. I think he actually did decide he wanted to be with his children and not the children he's managing in the caucus every day.
But it is also true that the kind of Republican Party he once said he wanted to be part of is not what the Republican Party is anymore. Right? Growth and opportunity and diversity and openness to immigration and I mean, all that is not what they stand for now. Mm-hmm. And you know, he seemed to make his peace with that as Speaker, but to the extent that he articulated principles for what he thought the party should stand for 2 years ago, that's not where they are now.
And remarkably, in his retirement announcement, he didn't talk about any of that. He's basically just accepted it.
Right.
You looked skeptical, Christine, in the middle of the list of what the Republican Party stood for.
I'm just not sure that the Republican Party has ever stood for diversity and diversity of opportunity and, you know, being kind to immigrants, although maybe they were more so before this year.
They could have been less so.
Right. Like, it's only been downhill, but I'm not sure the hill was that high to begin with. That's all.
Well,
that's fair. I think that's one of the questions people are having about Paul Ryan, too, the debate over was Paul Ryan for real? He talked about fiscal discipline, and some people are saying, well, he just didn't get it done, but he really, really believed in that. Or was he just another example of a Republican who wields that cudgel when a Democrat is in office, and then the moment a Republican gets into office, drops it and says, actually, what I want to do is give tax cuts to the wealthy?
And, you know, back in the Cold War, there were Republicans who said, this is, whether we like it or not, becoming a more diverse country. And if the party is going to prosper in the future, we're going to have to find ways to appeal to other than old white men. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and if you go back to Bush, and it was like, oh, you know, Asian Americans, they're entrepreneurial, they should like the Republican ideology, you know. And now that doesn't seem, seems to be a spirit of how can we constrict immigration so the country becomes diverse more slowly, and how can we restrict the franchise so so the voting base becomes diverse more slowly, and you don't hear Republican voices saying that very much, saying, oh, how can we appeal to other voters? So, I mean, I'm not saying they were there, but I think there were people like Jack Kemp and Paul Ryan who said, we have to try and get there at least. And that doesn't seem to be an aspiration right now.
Well, Black Americans, what do you have to lose? I guess that's the selling point now, which,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now for something that decidedly was
completely
not
different.
around during the Cold War, Facebook.
Oh,
I use it. I think you guys use it.
I am on Facebook.
And 2 billion more of you out there use it, all 2 billion of whom are definitely watching this show. Even more than that are affected by Facebook's data privacy policies or lack thereof, and that is what landed CEO Mark Zuckerberg in the congressional hot seat for 2 days this week, answering questions from both the Senate and the House. The 33-year-old billionaire frequently reminded members of Congress how young and naive he was when he started the tech platform.
From the beginning of the company in 2004, I started it in my dorm room. We didn't have AI technology.
The "aw shucks, I'm sorry for accidentally becoming all-powerful" routine might have worked with members of the Senate who showed a profound lack of understanding about Facebook and how the internet even works.
Which users don't pay for your service.
Senator, we run ads.
I see. That's great.
But members of the House came more prepared on the second day of questioning. Here's Representative Ben Ray Lujan skewering Zuckerberg for Facebook's privacy policies.
You've said everyone controls their data, but you're collecting data on people that are not even Facebook users, that have never signed a privacy agreement, and you're collecting their data. And it may surprise you that on Facebook's page, when you go to I don't have a Facebook account and would like to request all my personal data stored by Facebook, it takes you to a form that says go to your Facebook page, and then on your account settings, you can download your data. So you're directing people that don't have access, don't even have a Facebook page, to have to sign up for a page to release their data. We've got to fix that.
So, Dana, you were there.
Yes, they've actually come a long way, since Al Gore, as a United States Senator, invented the internet, and sometime after that, the late Ted Stevens informed us how it worked. It was a series of tubes, and Orrin Hatch is picking up in that tradition. So yeah, I mean, I did have a little fun with his cushion and being propped up there and wearing the big boy suit, but. He may not remember the Cold War, but he is 33. He is 33 years old, and he's worth, what is it, 40 billion or something like that. So he is an adult. What I took issue with during this is when he was professing ignorance of all these questions, saying, "Let me have my team deal with you on that." I think he was very successful at. Pushing them off. Not that you really need to be successful at pushing them off. They're not going to enact much of anything anyway. The very fact that he's being questioned by 44 senators means they're really just there for appearance, and Facebook's not going to get any sort of spanking from Washington.
So do you think that's true, Christine? I mean, we're looking at what's actually going to happen going forward, what kind of regulation there could be. What do you imagine that might look like?
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. I think that the senators and Congress people were having a bit of fun pretending that they understood the series of tubes through which they send their children's pictures. But it was much more sort of, do you realize what you've done? Are you going to take steps, Mr. Zuckerberg, to fix this
Please.
by yourself? Tell us when you're done, but please do it sort of soon if you can. It wasn't particularly clear that they were actually going to do anything. Interestingly, among the photos taken, there were several photos of Zuckerberg's booster seat / lithium-ion battery. It's not clear what it was. But also a photo of his notes appeared that he had been holding in front of him the whole time. And a number of the questions that he had notes on were not questions that were ever actually asked by congressmen. He was prepared to talk about whether Facebook should be broken up, for instance, and no one even really suggested.
They're not going there.
Nobody was interested in doing that. He was he had notes talking about specific kinds of regulation and data privacy rules in line with the European data privacy regulation that's going into effect next month. And there was some sort of soft questioning about how to protect privacy. One senator, notably, asked Mark Zuckerberg if he would have been comfortable sharing his own hotel address with the assembled crowd, and he said absolutely not.
Pretty sure he was at the Trump International.
Probably currying favor as usual. But the hard questions that he was actually prepared for never really came up, and I was kind of surprised. Well, not that surprised, but it was interesting to note that.
I think some of them came up in the House. They were tougher on him, and there was an interesting line of questioning about what Facebook is, basically. They said, "Are you a media company? Are you an aerospace company?" And he said, we're not an aerospace company, but
I know that one.
but they have planes that they use to help deliver their services to people. So it's kind of this crazy thing where the platform does feel all powerful and does play into so many areas of society. And Congress, I think when they talk about regulation, wants to develop a framework according to one that exists for some other industry, but it's very difficult to do that when this industry doesn't fit into any box.
It's also true, I think they were using Facebook and sort of battering Mark Zuckerberg with their questions as a stand-in for almost the entire tech industry. For Twitter, for SpaceX, for all of these other companies that they still don't totally understand, maybe, and are not sure how to deal with, and are kind of mad about. But they don't have any real solutions in hand yet.
Well, and some of them do have solutions. They just know that there's not majority support for these things. And Ed Markey has some serious proposals out there. The one piece of legislation they're talking about doing would be some modest requirements for disclosures on political ads, which would hardly be onerous for Facebook. So, look, this Congress, even though there's unified control of the government, I think has been the fourth least productive in the last 30 years or so. And, fewer than 100 bills last year, and a number of those were renaming post offices. And it's hard even to rename a post office these days, so they're not about to regulate, well, for this Congress. They're not about to, at this time in the election season, to start regulating the internets.
But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the tech, that's true. But the techlash is real. And when you think about how people thought about Silicon Valley a few years ago compared to how they think about it now, there has been a real change. And you look at the two parties, and there's some danger for them because, the Silicon Valley has been perceived as pro-democratic, but Democrats tend to be more suspicious of big industry in general, but the Republicans are suspicious because they think Facebook's been ganging up on conservatives. So they didn't really necessarily have any natural friends on either side of the aisle here. And so it's, I think it's not entirely predictable where this ends up.
So I have a reader comment that, reader, I hope also, that sums up some of this techlash.
And subscriber.
Please.
We believe the majority of our viewers know how to read.
Chris Evanson says on Facebook, ironically, Zuckerberg is a thief and willingly sold our info. He needs to lose the victim card fast. And she says, Washington let the big boy off easily, didn't they?
Yes.
We'll see.
So,
and we're out of time.
Wrong.
But you're wrong, but we're out of time to tell you why, and we're not, as you see, out of opinions. So go to WashingtonPost.com/opinions for more. And if you think we don't look haggard enough from this wild news week, remember, it's only Thursday. We'll look worse tomorrow.